Hey everybody, Brian Hogman here, and my good friend
Chelsea Bedard
for another episode of the Positive Podcast. This actually doesn't say the Positive Podcast, but it says I love nice people.
Yeah.
Do you love nice people?
Freaking love nice people.
Love nice people.
So
you know what? So if you love nice people, follow us up. So if you haven't heard of the Positive Podcast, we really talk about three different things. We talk about personal finance, we talk about positive thinking, positive things, and we also talk about parenting. And we always do it with a book. We do a launch off with a book. You want to start us off? What's the book this week, in case you didn't see it already?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, you know what? Robert Kiyosaki, for those of you who don't know, I love this book. This book literally changed my life when I first read it. And he wrote it 25 years ago.
It's impressive.
And do you think it still holds true today?
Yeah, for sure.
So 25 years ago, he ended up writing about, and it's really about financial literacy. I tell you a story about when I first read this book.
Let's hear it.
Robert Kiyosaki. I worked at the bank, and I was making like $35,000 a year, $40,000 a year. And the first time a customer gave it to me, I totally ignored it. He said, "You should really read this book. You're young, you're a go-getter, you should read this book." And I was like, tossed it away. I was like, I'm not reading that. That looks dumb. I know about money. I work at a bank. And a year later, another customer came to me, gave me the book, and and I was like, man. And I don't know why. I think you have to be in the right frame of mind to like listen to a book or read a book or see it. But it just totally changed my life. And he talks about getting out of the rat race. You hear that? What do you think about that?
I mean, it's true. It's just like different ways to build wealth and start applying the strategies.
Yeah, like I think what resonated the most with me was like have your passive income exceed your employment income, right? And I remember back then I was like, it set me on the trajectory for rental properties to say, okay, now this is going back 20 years ago, but I was like, okay, I make $4,000 a month, so I need to have enough passive income in order to exceed my employment income. And that worked out to be about like 3 or 4 homes back in the day.
That's
a little bit different today because it's a long time ago. A little bit different today, but
yeah. But I do believe that the actual like message is still there.
I totally agree. Like he talks a lot about assets, right? Like buy assets and not liabilities. And this is 25 years ago. And I think, you know, I still think rental properties are great today. And I know they're harder to do today. But I think the idea is that it's an asset. You know why I like rental properties is because what are the other assets he talks about? He talks about patents, royalty deals, books. Like if you write a book, like you can get paid on it. But I think the idea is that not everybody has the skill set to be able to write a book, be an entrepreneur, start a business. But majority of people do have the skill set to buy an investment property. Mm-hmm. It may be hard, it may be difficult, but those other things are way more difficult to do than it is to purchase an investment property when you put it in comparison.
Yeah, very true. And also like stocks and investments that way too.
Totally. Yeah. So I think, you know what, the other thing too that was kind of that kind of tricked me, I think, was the idea of passive income. I used to think, and tell me if you thought this too, I used to think when I first read this book and I heard about passive income, I used to think passive income meant I can sit on the beach, drink margaritas, and not do anything, and then wheelbarrows of money just show up at my door, right?
That's amazing, yeah.
But that's not the case,
no.
Right? And I think passive income just means that you don't necessarily have to show up 40 hours a week for it, right? Like you may have to, like you have investment properties, how much time do you put into them?
Yeah, like totally not the same, not even comparable to doing the 9-to-5 mortgage grind.
9-to-5 mortgage grind. That's not a grind.
No, it's a pleasure. But I do feel like you have to stay on top of it. You should be looking at it, I don't know. I feel like you look at it more than I do. I probably look at mine like once a month or you're like every week.
Yeah, I spend like 3 to 4 hours a week on it. It's kind of my Saturday routine. I've got like 2 to 3 hours. I'll go into the office and like go through what needs to be done. But when I look at the input to output, like 2 to 3 hours a week versus 40 hours a week on a 9-to-5, that is passive still, right?
Absolutely. That's great.
Yeah, totally. So when it comes down to investment properties and personal finance today, are they still a good idea, do you think?
Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely. It's hard, like you said, to qualify with today's interest rates and saving the down payment. But if you can do it, you totally should.
Yeah, I had a client actually, and his mindset. I think a lot of it has to do with mindset today when it comes down to investment property. Not that you can will yourself into an investment property, but the idea was that he had almost $100,000 saved up and already owned a house, and he was terrified to put the down payment on the house because it would deplete his savings. And then in his mind, he was thinking, I've got to pay for the principal residence where I live. I've got to pay for my rental property. And what if I don't make any more money? And you start going down this scarcity of like terrible, terrible things that are going to happen. And I was just like, you just need to exercise. And he was actually a bodybuilder guy. I met him half naked on stage one time. That's another story for another day. But it's just like building that muscle.
Yeah.
You need to be able to build the muscle of sending the money out in order to put into investment and not have it in your bank account.
Right.
That's how it grows.
Right. I remember you said to me once too, I was just like, how did you do this in such a short amount of time? Because you've done really well in like a decade. You know what I mean? Like you have quite a few properties. And I remember you saying, it never left my brain, you're like, I just don't have fear with it. Like you just go for it. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense, right? Like everybody else talks themselves out of it.
Totally. And you know what I tell Lila all the time too? Like, I'm sure you have sayings that you say to Isaac. And one of them is, and I end up saying, I think it's a common theme with a lot of the books that we read and a lot of ones we talk about on the Positive podcast, but it's like, I always remind Lila, you can't have courage without fear. Mm-hmm. Right? Courage does not exist without fear. And it's like, you got to be okay with fear. And then things like when you step into it and you do the things that make you scared, like I told the one client, I said, hey, listen, you know what? When you put down 100,000, guess what? 5 years from now, you'll probably be in a situation where you're going to have to put down 200,000.
Yeah.
And then maybe one day, 10 years from now, you're going to have to put down $1 million.
Yeah.
But if you don't exercise that muscle and overcome that fear today, you'll never be able to do it.
For sure. Yeah. For
Cool.
sure. Get uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what do you think about, like, I always, speaking about money with Rich Dad, Poor Dad and stuff like that, what's your thoughts on allowance for, like, kids, like for Isaac and for Lila?
Yeah, I'm totally open-minded to it. I haven't started it yet. Actually, the other day was like, if you get XYZ on your report card, like, I was thinking maybe like a reward with it. Like, my parents never did that. But I thought maybe that would be interesting. And he was like, Mom, I just want wrestlers. Like, he didn't care about money.
A equals John Cena.
Yeah.
Is that what we're saying? A equals John Cena.
Yeah.
B equals, who's the Iron Sheik?
Yeah.
No, that might be a little dated for some people.
I think
then.
he's into
Sorry.
like, I don't even know, Cody Rhodes. Anyway.
Oh, who?
Cody Rhodes? Okay, or Rey Mysterio. Who knows?
You've got a list of 10.
I know.
Yeah, you do know. You do know.
But yeah, I am open-minded to it. I just haven't initiated it yet.
Well, I think, like my parents never paid me for getting good grades. It was just the expectation, right? Like, obviously, you're going to get good grades. You're going to do a good job. Like, why do I have to pay you for it, right? But I think that we had a parent-teacher interview the other night, and bless her heart, she had an idea, and she was just talking about rewarding the effort.
Yeah.
Right? Which I think is kind of awesome. So like we're doing a spelling test, and it's not rewarding the result, but rewarding the effort. Because I really want to teach her to have the grind.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like if you do really, really good at something and you get perfect, you think life is simple, but it's not always going to work out that way.
No, definitely not. It is the effort. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I never got rewarded with report cards, like getting paid. But I like trying hard. Like, I was always, I was happy to try to get an A just naturally. But my son's not like that.
Not yet. Not yet.
yet.
Well, I think, what, they're blossoming in different directions at different times, right? I think what I found hard too with the allowance part is the consistency. I find that, we had a chore chart, and it was really cool. It was like you had to like make your bed, do this, do this, do this, do that, right? And it's like, I find that I have to be on it, and same with Wendy, make sure that we're constantly doing the reminders, because it takes a little bit of time to build the habit.
Right.
But then if I'm not helping build the habit, and if Wendy's busy doing something too, then all of a sudden that habit slips.
Right.
And then I can be like, you didn't do your chores.
Yeah, no allowance for you, Lila.
Yeah. Well, you know what she wanted? Oh man, she wanted to end up getting Minecraft.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Is it Isaac into that at all?
No, just Still the Wrestlers.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I don't know. We're saving up for a Nintendo Switch, so I'll let you know how that ends up going.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So anyways, any other thoughts on Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Mr. Kiyosaki, that you wanted to share?
Yeah, honestly, I know I laughed when I read this one because you say this to the team all the time. And it's just funny that he wrote this like 25 years ago and he had this in there too. And it's when emotions are high, intelligence is low. And I'm thinking that this is coming into when he's purchasing real estate, when things are getting emotional and like you're looking at his finances, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's fair, right? Because when money's on the line, how do you react, right? I think a lot of times when money's on the line, you want to retract yourself, or you want to, recluse, get away from the situation to sort of save it, right? Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of people, like, when you saved up a nest egg, the last thing you want to do is invest it in something, right? Because you're like, oh my God, it's so pretty. It's sitting in my bank account right now. I can touch it, taste it, smell it.
Right.
But it's not doing anything there, right? So, and that's where I think, you have to train your emotions on that. Totally agree.
Yep. Let me just see here. Okay, so the book starts off too. It says, one dad paid his bills first and the other paid his bills last. Which dad do you think this was, Brian?
I know the answer. The rich dad paid his bills last.
Yeah, and I love that, right? Like,
but why?
Well, because
let's not give the wrong message here, okay? So if you want to be rich, don't pay your bills and just everything works out. That's not the case.
Because he invested in himself. That always came. Number one, he paid himself first. Still paid his bills, but he made sure that he was investing in himself.
You know what? I love that. And I got to tell you, I used to think it was a scam. No, but I don't know if other people like this, but I used to think that, because you'd see all these people like Robert Kiyosaki or all these influential, positive people telling you to invest in yourself, buy a coaching program. And then I would think to myself, of course you want me to buy a coaching program. Of course you're going to say that because that's how you get paid. So you're feeding your own pipeline. But the reality is that is the best investment that you can possibly make. And I've learned it time and time and time again. And it just helps you fast forward things so quickly, right? Like the rich dad said, like, paying yourself first is by far the best thing. I totally agree with that.
Do you have any other things that jumped out at you, this book?
No.
You're like the whole thing.
Nothing else. Well, you know what I love too? I think, I can't remember this one or the one, cash flow quadrants that he has as well too.
Yes.
If you've read that one, that's another one I totally recommend. And he breaks down, like, you can be an ESBI, employee, self-employed, business owner, or investor. And he says that, 80% of the population is on the left side when you're employed or self-employed, and 20% is a business owner, investor. But then 80% of the wealth is on the right side and 20% is on the left side.
Yeah.
Right? So the idea is how do you cross that line? Because I know in our industries, there's a lot of really wealthy or rich or people that have made a lot of money in the self-employed area. But the idea is that if you ever take that away, your income's gone.
Right.
You could have a really rich doctor, lawyer, someone like that. And that's why I love how he painted that picture. Is like, you can make a lot of money as self-employed, but if you don't turn it into investments or business, it's completely dependent upon you.
Such a good message. Yeah. I also like, in the book, he mentions to be rich or wealthy, you're going to have to be super focused, but not balanced. That one hit home with me.
Are you not balanced?
I don't think so.
Well, I think balance comes in his message too, is balance, and comes at different times in your life as well too, right? I think balance may not come day to day or week to week or month to month.
Right.
Or year to year. Right? But I think he's right. It's not balanced regularly, but there does have to be balance at some point. But everybody's different as to how it works. Like, where do you find your balance then? Like, what balances you out?
Yeah, like I would say at nighttime when I go to the gym or reading a book on the weekend, like I do have balance. I would say that's like a Sunday for me.
Right.
Yeah. The other 6 days are
out of
fun
balance
and exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I am focused on the goal, and I think that's a great message because I just don't know if that truly exists if you don't have goals.
Yeah. I think it's different for everybody, right? Like, I know for me, my balance in my 40s was different than my balance in my 30s, which is different from balance in my 20s. Balance in 20s was
a good time.
Not a positive podcast. It was very different, but I think and I think there's no right or wrong answer to it as well too. You got to sort of figure out what works best for you in that regard, right?
For sure.
So guys, check out Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. I was going to say timeless and tasteless, but that doesn't even make any sense. But timeless information there. And if there's any other books that you want to hear or have us look at on the Positive Podcast that we can somehow relate to good and bad parenting advice, we'd be happy to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.